Web scraping allows you to extract useful information from one or multiple websites. Imagine scraping an e-commerce catalog to discover emerging product trends, or aggregating job listings from various sites to get a comprehensive view of the job market. But don't forget the most exciting current use case of web scraping, gathering data for use in LLM-powered apps. This data can serve as a knowledge base for your own AI services such as chatbots, virtual assistants, automated content generation tools, and much more. If you're not familiar with web scraping and you think there's a high learning curve to do it right, then you're not alone. Web scraping usually involves coding a script to do the scraping for you, or relying on third-party services that often come with limitations. Scraping with BuildShip, on the other hand, is a game changer. There are many levels of web scraping you can do with BuildShip. You can scrape data from a single web page, scrape all the pages from an entire website, or for a more structured approach, leverage AI to scrape just the data you care about. BuildShip offers the flexibility and power to handle any web scraping task, all in low-code style. In this series, we'll dive deep into web scraping with BuildShip. We'll look at static scraping, dynamic scraping, crawling, and LLM extraction. And as a bonus, we'll show you a practical use case of the data we scrape by creating our very own custom GPT-powered AI assistant. This series is going to be filled with exciting information and hands-on examples. So grab a coffee, settle in, and let's get started. Part 1. Static Scraping. Let's start with our most basic node for scraping, Scrape Web URL. Here we have a basic BuildShip workflow with the Scrape Web URL node. This node will scrape the given web URL and return the text content. Our URL is set to the templates page of BuildShip, and the selector is set to body, meaning we want to scrape all the text in the body of this page. Let's test this workflow, and as you can see, we're getting back only the text of this page. Great, this is the easiest way to get started scraping with BuildShip, and works great for less complex sites that don't rely on JavaScript to load. Now let's see how you can build this workflow. First, we'll clone the scrape static site template. This workflow is using the REST API call trigger. We already have a lot of content covering the various types of triggers BuildShip supports, so we're not going to spend too much time on this. Instead, we'll shift our focus to the Scrape Web URL node. Now we need to update the URL and selector inputs. For this demo, we'll be scraping this blog post from BuildShip. To begin, let's copy the URL, and back in BuildShip, we'll paste it as the URL to scrape. Next, we need to specify which part of the page we want to scrape by passing a selector. We only care about scraping the actual body of the post, so any other content like recommendations can be omitted. Now we need to find a selector that wraps only the blog post. In the browser, we can right-click and then select Inspect. And at the bottom, we'll see the full HTML structure of the current page. If we move our cursor over the various elements of the page, then the browser will highlight the sections for us. Now we just need to find the element that wraps the content of the post. Selecting this element shows us that only the content of the post is highlighted. So this is the section we want to scrape. The selector for this section will be the value of this class attribute. So first, we'll copy this value, and back in BuildShip, we'll paste it as the selector. But since this is a class selector, we need to prefix it with a period. And believe it or not, that's all there is to the Scrape Web URL node. The final node in our workflow is returning the scrape content we get from the Scrape Web URL node. And now we can put our workflow to the test. Nice! After a few seconds, we get back all of the scrape text from the blog post. Pretty easy, right? In the next part, we'll see how we can use a dynamic version of this node to perform more complex scraping, such as typing into a search box and scraping the loaded results. Part 2. Dynamic Scraping. Let's dive into a more advanced web scraping demo with BuildShip. Imagine we're on this e-commerce site and we want to search for office chairs. And after searching, we get back our search results of chairs. Now the big question is, how can we scrape these search results? Let's answer that. Here's a BuildShip workflow. This workflow is using the Scrape Web URL dynamic node. The URL is set to the e-commerce site we want to scrape. The selector is set to the element that wraps the product's return from the search results. And last but not least is the steps input. This is where we can specify the actions we want to perform on the page, such as typing or clicking a button. We'll test this workflow, and there you have it. If we expand the results, we can see that we are in fact getting back the chairs from the search result. Let's build out this workflow. First, we'll clone the Scrape Dynamic Site template. In this demo, we'll be scraping from this e-commerce site. Let's copy this URL, And back in BuildShip, we'll paste it. Ultimately, what we want to scrape and extract is the search results. So if we search for desk, we want to extract these search results only. Let's find the selector for these products. We'll inspect the page. And as can be seen highlighted, this is the section of the page we want to scrape. We'll select the class name here. And back in BuildShip, we'll paste it as the selector we want to scrape. But since it's a class selector, we need to prefix it with a period. And now onto the important part, which is specifying the steps of action we want to perform on the page. Once the page is loaded, we want to type our query in the search box of the site, and then scrape the search results of the given selector we just entered. To begin, let's open the Nodes info panel, and then we'll want to copy the sample input for steps. And then we'll just paste it as the steps to use for our steps input. Steps takes an array of sequential actions to perform on the page. To find out further details about the actions you can do, then just follow this link. For our first action, what we want to do is type the text desk in the search box of the site. So we'll need to find the selector for this search input. Let's inspect the page, and here we can see the selector for the search input. We'll copy it for now. Back in BuildShip, our page action is already set to type. So for the first parameter, we'll paste the selector we just copied. And since it's a class name, we need to prefix it with a period. And then for the second parameter, we'll enter the text we want to type in the search input, desks. Our second action will be to begin searching by clicking on the search button. We'll inspect the page again, and we can see the class name for this button. Let's copy it. And back in BuildShip, we'll paste it as the first and only parameter for the click action. Our last action is to wait for the page navigation to complete. This is because when we click the search button, we have to wait a few seconds for the search to complete, at which point we will be redirected to the search results page. Our action is set to wait for navigation, where the maximum time to wait is 3 seconds. And we want to wait until the page is fully loaded. Finally, we're returning the results from our scrape dynamic node. And we're done. Now let's test our workflow. And after a few seconds, we get back the results. If we inspect the results, we can see that we're only getting back desk as per our search query. Dynamic scraping is a great option for more complex scraping requirements. But what if we want to scrape an entire website instead of just one page? Do we have to manually do this page by page? Well, you'll be pleased to know that we don't, because in the next video, we'll look into BuildShip's crawler node and how it can handle scraping an entire site efficiently. Part 3. Web crawler. Scraping a single web page works fine for a lot of use cases. But how can we scrape all the pages of a website? Well, yet again, BuildShip is here to help. We can use BuildShip's crawler node to easily scrape all the pages from just about any website. Here's a BuildShip workflow using the crawler node to crawl and scrape all the pages from the BuildShip documentation site. Let's test this workflow and see the results. Once crawling is completed, we have an items array containing information about all the crawl pages, such as the URL, page title, description, and more importantly, the scraped content of the page. Let's see what it takes to build this workflow. To begin, we'll clone the crawl website template. And at the crux of this workflow is the crawler node. As with all the scrape nodes from BuildShip, the first input we'll fill out is the URL. In this demo, we'll be crawling BuildShip's documentation site. So let's copy the URL and paste it in BuildShip. Next, for the selector, we want to scrape everything within the body of the page. And now let's move on to some of the options. Max concurrency defaults to 5, and this is how we can control the number of crawls to run in parallel. You can play around with this option to see what value gives you better performance. Max request per call can be used to limit the number of pages to crawl. If you're crawling a very large website, then this is a good option to set. Otherwise, crawling may take a very long time to complete, and you may run into a timeout error. Proxy URLs is an interesting one. Certain websites may enforce IP address blocking in some form, which blocks any attempt of scraping. A potential workaround is a proxy server. Proxies act as intermediaries between the crawler and the target website, allowing the crawler to make requests from different IP addresses and potentially bypass restrictions or rate limits imposed by the website. If you happen to have a list of proxy servers, then you can specify their URLs in this option. The last option, crawl ID. One of the values returned from the crawler node is the crawl ID. If you're scraping a very large website, then you'll want to do it in chunks. So you can use the crawl ID here returned from the previous crawling to continue crawling the remaining URLs. Finally, we're returning all the results from the crawler node. And believe it or not, our workflow is complete. It's now time to test our crawler node. After a short moment, crawling is complete and we have our results. Let's inspect these results further. The information in our crawler results includes the total count of pages crawled, an items array containing the individual pages with their URLs, titles, description, and the scrape content. Additionally, we received the crawl ID and some other data as well. Crawling an entire website is already a powerful method of scraping. But what if we told you there's an even easier and more convenient method of scraping a website that BuildShip offers? One that involves AI doing all the data massaging for you. Sounds interesting? Then the next video is one you don't want to miss. Part 4. LLM Extraction. We've left potentially the most convenient and exciting method of scraping for last. Introducing LLM Extraction from BuildShip. Easily extract structured data from any web page using your favorite LLMs, such as GPT from OpenAI or Cloud from Anthropic. This is an LLM extraction workflow, and it's using the OpenAI version of the LLM Extract node. We're going to be extracting specific fields from Hacker News, such as title, link, score, and user. Let's kick off the extraction by testing our workflow. Wow, look at that. We're getting back only the data we care about. That is the title, link, score, and user. Now let's do a quick check on Hacker News to verify this data is accurate. The first post here is titled Snowflake Breach. If we look at our results, we can see that it matches. Now what's interesting is that the LLM has taken care of all the data messaging for us, such as removing unnecessary content and returning our data in a well-structured and consistent format. Exciting, right? Let's build this workflow. For this demo, we're going to extract data from this e-commerce site. And we're only interested in extracting the product title, price, link, and image URL. Back in BuildShip, we'll start by cloning the Anthropic LLM Extract template. For this demo, we're going to be using the Anthropic version of the LLM Extract node. But keep in mind that BuildShip provides an OpenAI version as well. The first thing we'll do is select our Anthropic API key. Remember, you can always add a new one if you don't already have your API key saved in BuildShip. Next, we'll copy the URL of the e-commerce site we'll be working with in this demo and paste it back in BuildShip as the URL to extract from. Selector is optional here, so we could just skip it. The important part of this node is the fields we want to extract from the web page. The LLM will try to use the field names you enter to identify and extract the data you're interested in. So it's important to be precise and clear when naming these fields to ensure accurate data extraction. We'll enter the field names we want to extract from the e-commerce site, separated by commas. Lastly, we need to specify the extraction mode, which can either be HTML or text. The text option provides a concise context, but removes HTML semantics like page and image links. So since we want to also extract the product link and image URL, we'll leave it set to HTML. Finally, we're returning the results from the extraction node. And with that, we're ready to test our workflow. After a few seconds, we get back the extracted data. Great. Now let's further inspect this and verify its accuracy. We're receiving an array of extracted items, each containing the product title, price, link, and image URL. We can preview one of the image URLs just to make sure it's working. And it is. By double-checking on the website, we can further verify that the products we extracted exist on the site as well. For instance, the first item here is Acme slip-on shoes, and if we check in our results, this is the first item we extract. We've just gone through 4 methods of scraping with BuildShip, each offering its own unique advantages and capabilities. Now that you're familiar with these different scraping options, what's next? Well, the applications of the data you scrape and gather are endless. But one exciting use case is to funnel all this data into powering your very own AI assistant. And we just can't resist showcasing practical use cases of BuildShip. So in the next video, we'll see how we can take the data we scrape from our LLM Extract node and use it to power our very own AI assistant by using BuildShip's powerful OpenAI assistant node. To get started, we'll clone the OpenAI assistant with retrieval template. We already have a lot of content covering the assistant node in depth, so we're going to be glancing over some of the details in this demo because the main thing we want to focus on is uploading our scraped data to an OpenAI assistant so that we can start chatting with it. First, let's change the trigger path to chat with e-commerce. Let's configure the assistant node. First, we'll select our OpenAI API key. Next, we need to fill in the assistant ID. To get this, we'll create a new assistant in the OpenAI console, and we'll call it e-commerce assistant. Then we'll select the latest GPT model, and from here we'll enable the file search tool. Now we just need to upload our scrape data. We'll go back to the LLM extract workflow we built in the previous video and test it again. Then we'll copy all the results and paste it in a text editor. We'll save it and name it products.json. Next, we'll upload it to our assistant. And just like that, we've provided the scrape e-commerce data to our assistant for it to use as knowledge base. And now we just need to copy the assistant ID, and back in BuildShip, we'll paste it. Next, let's update the system instructions. We've updated it to, you're an e-commerce assistant, you help customers find out information about various products. Use only the provided data to form your answers, and if you don't know the answer, just say you don't know instead of making something up. Our user prompt will be sent in the request body. And for this demo, we don't need to specify a thread ID, so we can just remove it. Lastly, the built-in tool to use is already set to file search, which is what we want. And the final node in this workflow is returning the response from our assistant node. That's all the setup we need to do, and we're now ready to start testing our assistant. We'll go to tests and switch the body, and here we'll pass our message to the assistant. Hi, I'm looking for a hat, and now we'll test the workflow. And after a short moment, our assistant gives us a reply back. We asked our assistant about hats, and if we look closely at the message, we can see that it contains information about the hats we scraped and uploaded to the assistant. Let's try sending another message to our assistant. This time, we're going to ask it if it has anything for our dog available in the catalog. We'll go to tests, switch to the body tab again, and we'll add our new message. Hi, do you have anything for my dog? Let's test the workflow. We got back a response. Let's expand the results. And our assistant is telling us, yes, there's an item available for your dog. You can get the Acme dog sweater, which is priced at $20. Let's verify this by going back to the e-commerce site. And you can see that it's here, Acme dog sweater, valued at $20. Amazing, right? Now just imagine if you apply any or all of the scraping options BuildShip provides to gather your data and use it to power your own AI assistant. For example, you could automate customer service by scraping common FAQs and product details to provide instant responses to customer inquiries. Or you could enhance product recommendations by scraping competitors, pricing, and availability, allowing your assistant to suggest the best deals. The possibilities are truly endless. If you've made it this far, we're sure you're excited to start deploying the 4 scraping methods we covered. And we're equally excited to see what you create using the power of information and BuildShip. So don't forget to share your ideas and feedback in the comments. Oh, and while you're still around, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on all the amazing content we're releasing. Until the next video, happy BuildShipping!